Every single group has officially concluded, so I thought this was the perfect time to do a little recap and talk about everything we learned after the FNCS group stages are done now. I want to talk about some different things like which teams surprised me the most, which teams were kind of disappointing, what I think some of these trios' real ceiling and floors are in grand finals, and if I believe they have LAN qualifying potential. We have a lot to go over in today's video. Before the video starts though, please subscribe to the channel if you guys are new, as we are in FNCS Grand Finals week now, so we're going to have so much competitive content coming out for you guys. If you want to support me even more, the best way to do so is by using code KDOG in the Fortnite item shop. Follow me on my Twitch because we are going to be watching Grand Finals live over there, so if you want to watch it with me, just make sure you guys go drop a follow. Without further ado though, let's start off with over a week ago now of FNCS Group 1, the Peterbot group. So in Group 1, there is a couple of different trios that really caught my attention, but the first team that was most impressive to me was the trio of Taki, Eshu, and Vert. Now these guys only played 2 games before they got a win, but their match history for those 2 games were a 7 elimination second and a 10 elimination win. Now the thing with this trio is their placements so far in the divisional cups that they played this season were a 10th, 9th, and a 12th. So they were not even able to pull off a single top 5 in any divisional cup that they played, and then going into their group that quite literally had Peterbot, Cold, and Ritual, which is like probably almost undeniably the best trio in the entire world. They were able to finish top 2 in their first game and then win their second game. Now when I was VOD reviewing these guys, they were basically on high ground for pretty much both of their games here, and I don't know how realistic that is actually going to be for a situation like a grand finals when so many more teams are going to be going for height. But at the same time, in a group stage like this where winning a game is the only thing that matters and can take you into a grand finals, them showing that they can still hold height in a lobby where basically everybody wants it is still super impressive to me. The other trio that was so impressive to me was second place in consistency of Bryce, G Money, and Osid. Now these guys did not play a single divisional cup together. We know that G Money and Osid used to play with Kanata before Kanata dropped them, and then Bryce was playing with Reet for a little bit until Reet dropped him, and so these guys ended up forming together, and they were tied for the most consistent team that was not able to get a win, finishing the tournament with 23 total elims and a 7.4 average placement. Their games from 2 to 5 was a 4 elimination 5th, 4 elimination 6th, 2 elimination 5th, and a 12 elimination 3rd. I love the G Money and Osid combo for being able to frag out. Bryce is one of the most underrated IGLs in the entire game. He's one of the best LAN players over the last couple of years as well. This could 100% be a trio that I wouldn't be surprised if they were able to qualify for LAN this year. I don't know if they're going to be able to do it this season or not, but I really hope these guys stick together, build up chemistry together, because they showed that in their heat, they have real potential to be a top 10, maybe even a top 7 or 8 team on the region as well. And then of course, you can't talk about this heat without talking about Peterbot, Cold, and Ritual. They were not able to win a game in this, which I don't really think that was a super disappointment, because when you look at their match history, it's literally disgusting. It's a 10 elimination 7th, 20 elimination 2nd, 17 elimination 8th, and then a 26 elimination 2nd in their very final game. This trio can quite literally run through lobbies at will. They finished with far and away the most amount of elims out of anybody in the group stages, getting 74 total elims, which was 31 more elims than the second most that was held by Vico, Vino, and Flixie in their group. So this is still the best fighting trio in the entire world. They were able to get 2 second places as well, so it's not even like they were like struggling to even come close to getting wins, and they were the only team in groups to drop multiple 20 bombs as well. I think after going over some of the other trios we're going to talk about from the big 3 on NA, the only team that really raised my confidence level in them going into grands was 100% Ritual, Cold, and Peterbot. I think they are undeniably the FNCS favorites right now. I just don't really think any other team matches their fighting level, and especially in a grand finals where elims are worth even more points, that is only going to benefit this trio more. I'll do more of a deep dive on these guys going into grand finals when I make my actual grand finals predictions video, but my confidence levels are still sky high for this trio. And then I don't think there was any like super disappointing teams from this group. I think the team that I was kind of like the most disappointed in though was 11th place, only 5 points away from being able to qualify to grands, of Scare, Edgy, and Chance. This team's placements in the 2 divisional cups that they played together was a 6th and a 16th, and they were even able to win a game in one of the divisional cups as well. I thought this team was going to be a trio that was potentially going to be able to pull off a win, and so for me predicting them to win a game to them not even qualifying for grand finals, it did kind of disappoint me. It wasn't even like they were like super inconsistent or nothing either. They were literally the 3rd most consistent team out of any trio that was not able to get a win, having an average placement of 8.4 and getting 15 total elims. And I don't want to sit up here and like bash them or anything. It wasn't like they had the worst performance of all time. Like I said earlier, they were literally 5 points away or 2 elims away from being being able to make it into grand finals right now, but I thought this was 100% a trio that was going to qualify out of this heat. Moving over to EU Group 1, I think the team that I was honestly most surprised in was Chris, Tayson, and Chicho. You might be a little bit confused and you're like, oh, these are some of the best names in all of EU, but if you look at their placements in the Div Cups that these guys played, they got 9th, 16th, and 8th. For a trio that has Tayson on it, arguably a top 5, maybe even a top 3 player of all time for some of you guys, the expectations are always going to be super high on him, and I honestly just haven't really been too high on Tayson recently. And so for these guys to go into their heat and get a 4 elimination 3rd, 5 elimination 8th, then a 13 elimination win, I think this was a super impressive and good performance from these guys. I think I am still debating whether or not they are even a top 10 trio on EU, but I think this is massive for their confidence going into grands now, since they haven't really been like all that impressive really since they formed together. And then the other trio that I was most surprised about, honestly a trio that I did not expect this from, was Dexy, Huddy, and Artist. Now these guys started off the tournament with an absolute bang, getting a 13 elimination win in the only game that they had to play in this heat. I really didn't see anybody predicting Huddy's trio to be able to win a game, and so for them to be able to do it in game 1 was just so impressive for me. Obviously I could talk about the trios like Vanya, Pixie, and Marius and how they were just so consistent in this without being able to get a win still, but I kind of want to highlight some of the other trios that I really just didn't expect that much out of. I think the most disappointing team for me, unfortunately, was 13th place of Howley, Etsy, and Dan DePuzo. These guys were still almost 100 points away from being able to qualify. They made 3 Div Cups together as well, placing 13th, 19th, and 22nd. So they weren't like necessarily the greatest placements, but they were still showing that they can consistently qualify for finals week after week. But I don't think there was any like other super major disappointing teams from this heat from me. This wasn't necessarily like the strongest heat that we had either though. Moving on to NA Group 2, this is where it gets a little bit spicy. I think 100% my favorite performance from this entire group was Bucky, Okus, and Cams. This trio didn't have the best first 2 games, but then their very final 3 games was a 8 elimination 3rd, 14 elimination 2nd, and a 5 elimination 9th. I wish I got to see a little bit more from them in game 1 and game 2, since that is usually when the heat is the most stacked, since all of the good players are still in it and they weren't able to get wins yet. But really the only like super good trio that was able to get a win in this heat was Muzz, Yapko, and Rise. So pretty much all of the other good trios in this heat, like Booga's trio, Clix's trio, Noxie's trio, they were all still there for all 5 of the games, and Bucky's trio finished with not only the most amount of elims, but also first place in consistency in this entire heat. It's looking like they are currently going to get uncontested drum gun as well. I don't know if I'm necessarily ready to put this team top 10 yet, because the only other set lobby finals that we saw them in the Div 1 Cup finals, they finished 18th in, but they look like a top 2 trio in this lobby. Do I think it's going to be difficult for them in grand finals with 2 controller players? Yes, 100%, and I think Surge is going to be one of their main issues. But like I said when I was watching these guys play heats, if they're able to keep up their aggressive playstyle in endgame and basically not play scared, I think this team could 100% pull off a top 10 in this grand finals. I just don't know if I'm necessarily ready to say that they're a top 10 team on the region or not yet though. And then a team that I think had a pretty mid performance, I wasn't like too blown away from what they did, but I also wasn't necessarily disappointed in them either. It was the trio of Rapid, Booga, and Threats. They were the most consistent team out of any trio that was not able to get a win, getting an average placement of 5.4. I kind of wanted to see a little bit more elims out of these guys, figuring that they only got 19 total elims. They sold one of their wins when Rapid basically just like fell off height, and they should have 100% won that game. I think they had the potential to win like 2 or 3 separate games in this group as well, and they were not able to get a single win. We know that this is a height trio though, and if they're able to hold that effectively in something like a grand finals, that is always going to elevate your performance there if you're able to get wins. But I'm still just nervous about this team's fighting ability, and if you have like Peterbot, Code, and Ritual ramping up and spraying you on high ground, are these guys going to be able to fight back well enough to hold height against trios like that? I just don't really know yet, and that is just what makes grand finals so entertaining. And then I think there was 2 trios that did kind of disappoint me in this. The first one is 100% has to be Clix, Yamzo, and Higgs. They were supposed to be a top 3 team on this region, and they didn't even look like a top 3 team in their own heat, because I would say Muzz's trio was better than them, Bucky's trio was better than them, and Booga, Threats, and Rapid were better than them. They got 27 total elims, which was decent, but they had an average placement of 10.6. They had games that they were kind of just trolling where they like full die to fall damage, but being a team that has FNCS winning potential and only making it out of your heat by 5 total points, it's just not necessarily what you want to see going into grand finals. Am I one of those people that's ready to take them out of the big 3 on NA? No way. They literally won the last divisional cup, ending Peterbot's 12 Cash Cup win streak in a row. I think recency bias is a hell of a drug for a lot of people though, but I do still just believe that they are the third best trio on NA. And then the other team that I thought was honestly almost a lock to be able to make this grand finals was Noxy, Mason, and Virgo. All three of these players are 100% grand finals caliber players, and so them finishing like 25 points out of qual range and only having 2 good games, getting an 8 elimination third and a 5 elimination fourth. We've already seen Noxy tweet out that he is looking for a brand new trio. I don't know what better options he's going to be able to get than these two players right here, so I honestly wouldn't be surprised if these guys just ended up playing last chance qualifiers together as well. But this was one of the trios that I did predict to be able to make grands, and they just weren't able to get the job done. And then by far and away the hardest group, the group of death, EU Group 2, definitely did not disappoint. The most impressive teams to me were Chap, Tini, and Skavi. These guys have honestly just been so impressive since forming together. They look like they have the potential to be a top 5 trio in the entire world. Their only 2 games that they played was a 4 elimination 8th and a 10 elimination win. These guys seem to be able to make it into every single one of the end games. We know that they have the fighting power on this team as well. And I know this isn't necessarily like a grand finals video, but they are currently contested by Tayson in grand finals at Crime City. And I'm not gonna lie, I think that off spawn fight is going to be complete domination by Chap's trio. I honestly could see that fight going like 8-4 in a grand finals, maybe even like a 9-3 if they're feeling extra crazy. I wish that they were uncontested because the ceiling would just be so much higher on this trio, but if they're able to end the fights quickly off spawn, they'll get that extra surge, they'll have the points from the elims that they're going to get, and they've already shown that they can make it into endgame pretty consistently. I really do love this trio, but I feel like they're one of the teams that has the highest fluctuation between them doing good or completely dudding. And then the other trio that I was most impressed with was the team that finished first in consistency of Comeback, Blaha, and Mixon. Now they got the 3rd most elims out of any single group, getting 39 total elims, which was only behind Vico, Vino, and Flixie, and then Peterbot in first. They were also one of the most consistent teams in this entire tournament as well. They're also one of the most consistent trios. I think also if you take away their last game, they were like far and away the most consistent trio. They had an average placement of a 2.75 in the first 4 games that they played, and by far the hardest group of all time. If that isn't literally the definition of impressive, then I just don't know what is. This team also does look like they are currently uncontested in grand finals. This is 100% a top 10 team on EU, and don't be surprised if they pull off a shocking top 5. There was a couple teams that I was kind of just mid on in this, like Vico, Vino, and Flixie. Obviously them getting the 2nd most elims with 43 total elims is always super impressive, but they didn't necessarily show like any real consistency. They only had 3 games inside the top 10, and their 2 good games was both 2nd places. Of course though, they are going to Masked Meadows now in grand finals, which is far and away a better drop spot than the mountain split that they were landing on. So I think this team is just going to get even better going into grands, and of course they are also the reigning defending EU grand finals winners. So I do still think that they are a top 2 and one of the trios on EU that does still have FNCS winning potential. And then another trio that I was kind of just mid on was Queasy, Swizzy, and Murstache. I think this is the other team that is arguably 1st or 2nd on the region. They did deal with some game crashing issues though, and then they just got a 6th elimination win in their 3rd game, just fully playing out the format. I think they just necessarily did what we all expected them to do. Nothing too surprising, but nothing really disappointing either. And I think you can take all of that for what I said about them and implement that into Cammy's trio as well. Just a really consistent trio, but I mean, they pretty much just showed us what we all expect out of them. I think the trios that I was most disappointed in this heat was 1, Pingwox and Malabuka. They were very similar to that Clix performance, except this team is a LAN qualified trio. They're arguably a top 3 trio in the entire region, and they didn't have a single game inside of the top 3 with the best POI on the map completely uncontested, and they barely were able to qualify. I wouldn't necessarily say I'm more worried about this trio going into grand finals. I've been pretty vocal about not always being the highest on Malabuka's trio. I do know how insane that they are, but I don't even know if I want to put them in my top 3 for this season yet or not. And then the other trio that I was pretty disappointed in was for Doxy, Pablo, and Chino. I just felt like they were on such a hot streak going into this heat, coming off of getting a 3rd place in the last Div Cup, getting Masked Meadows completely uncontested, and then still not being able to qualify. I feel like this was one of the most just like hyped up teams over the last couple of weeks, from what they were doing to Vico, Vino, and Flixie, to them also then contesting Mr. Savage. Like for Doxy's team had so much aura going for them, and they kind of just shot it all down after not even being able to make it out of this heat. Now finally moving on to Group 3 on NA, the trios that most surprised me are both arguable top 5 teams on the region. The first one was Ree, Cooper, and Curly. Now it only only took these guys 2 games to be able to make it into grands. Their average placement in these 2 games was a 1.5, getting a 7 elimination second and a 12 elimination win. Cooper has been talking about how confident he has slowly became in his IGLing ability ever since he started taking over more of that IGLing role in this trio. We know he is a LAN winner. Ree is one of the most experienced players in this game, and then Curly is that up and coming fragger who has been doing so insane in solos as well. Don't be surprised if this team is able to pull off a top 5 in this season's grand finals. And then the other trio that I don't even necessarily want to say they were surprising. Everybody knew that these guys were going to be able to make grands. Kanata continuing his streak of making every single grand finals, getting a 4 elimination win in game 1. Now back-to-back seasons of Kanata and Bolts winning game 1 of their heat. This team has been a little bit inconsistent since they officially formed together. They were only able to get a 4 elimination win, so they kind of were just fully playing the meta and trying to get a win as soon as possible. I still do like the fighting potential in this trio, even though they necessarily haven't showed me anything too crazy yet. I feel like this is one of the hardest teams on all of NA to really predict how they are actually going to do, because the pure caliber and potential of all of these players individually, I think we all know is absolutely insane, but how they're actually going to gel together in a grand finals is a whole different beast. And then even though they were able to finish first place in this heat, I still think Aegis, Acorn, and Poyo were a little bit disappointing. They had a game where they were literally dying to Surge, where there wasn't any other like super good trios in the lobby. This is the reigning defending NA FNCS champions. They're supposed to be by far and away the best trio in this entire lobby, and they really just did not show that. I think if they were not able to get a 9 elimination win in the final game, a lot more people would start having a lot more doubts on this trio. I still do not want to like overreact to heats, because they really don't compare to how a grand finals is going to go at the end of the day. This team is definitely not going to be struggling with Surge anywhere near as much as they were in heats. Poyo is going for his 5th FNCS win in a row. Acorn is the best IGL in all of NA, and Aegis was just the 2nd best player in last grand finals. If you think that this team is anything except for a potential FNCS winning trio this season, then you're honestly just crazy. Now, EU Group 3. The most surprising team for me has to be Mr. Savage, Vidil, and Rezon. This is the trio that I am starting my VOD review sessions on. I have been watching so much of their gameplay recently. The things that I like the most about this trio so far is the chemistry that they have already shown together. There is instances where like Vidil or Rezon can start to crash out a little bit on like Mr. Savage or just on each other in general, but that is just their personalities at the end of the day, and they always seem to end their conversation more positive than it started. The other thing that I really like about this trio is Mr. Savage's fighting ability and his awarenesses on refreshes. If you've been watching their end games, which I have been doing a lot of, Mr. Savage was actually the one that was taking over more of that tarping role in the end games, but he wasn't just tarping, he was actively looking for refreshes as well, showing off that 200 IQ that he has. And he really showed me something that I feel like I don't see a lot of IGL/tarpers really doing, and that is being able to be a good tarper as well as an efficient fragger as well. Like some of these plays that he were making, I just don't really see that many other IGLs being able to do. I think that the potential ceiling for this team is qualifying for LAN this season. There is so many good trios on EU that is going to be hard for me to figure out exactly where I want to put them, especially now that they are landing at the mountain split instead of Mass Meadows. They're downgrading on a POI, they're downgrading on loot, and I don't know what their real Storm Surge is going to look like in a grand finals. I wouldn't be surprised if Storm Surge was the thing that this trio struggled with the most, and that could kind of make me want to negatively put them down my rankings a little bit. But if this trio was able to figure out their Surge, which is a big if, then I do see the real potential in these guys if they're able to consistently make it into endgame. The fighting ability is there, the IQ is there for all of the players on this trio. Mr. Savage quite literally just got top 8 with Mongrel and Panzer last season. I think another top 10, maybe a top 8, and maybe even a LAN qualifying spot is very possible here. And then the other trio that I was so impressed with was the team that finished first place in consistency of Moneymaker, Fanayan, and Faded. Now, I did predict these guys to be able to make it into grand finals, but I didn't expect them to be the most consistent trio. They got 22 total elims and an average placement of 8.8. I mean, hey, we got Moneymaker back in grand finals. I'm not going to complain too much about it. Huge shout out to this trio. I don't think there was any necessarily like super disappointing teams. I did want to see a little bit more elims out of Shark, Truex, and Noah Riley, figuring that they only finished with 18 total elims and they played out all 5 5 of their matches, and their highest elim game didn't come until the very final game where they got an 8 elimination second, and then in all of their other games they didn't even get over 5 elims. But I don't think there was really any other trio that really disappointed me in this heat too much. You can take a quick little look at the current updated grand finals map. Is a couple more teams that have changed drop spots now and are uncontested, but some teams that are still contested is like Donnie Joji and Craze versus Uology. You have like Fuziak versus Noah W Plays, and then Silic versus Vorteca. All of the big names are still uncon, like Peterbot's trio, Clix's trio, Booga's trio, Bucky, Bolts, Acorn. All of these guys do still have uncontested drop spots, but we do still have to remember that there is going to be 3 more teams from the last chance qualifiers that we still have to add onto not only this map, but this map on EU as well. Now on EU, the most stacked off spawn fights is like definitely Chaptini Skavi versus Tayson. Moneymaker is currently triple contested, then Grip A is contested by Sand Guild. But like Savage is currently uncon, and I don't know if he's going to be able to get this whole entire split, like even with all of this down here completely uncontested as well. I wouldn't be surprised if a team that qualifies for heats tries to take this area right here, and then like Vino gets uncon mass right now, Noah Riley's uncon, Malibuka's uncon, Vanya's uncon, Queasy is uncon at Seaport City. It's looking really good for all of these super big name trios. Other than that though, the content is just getting started. We are going to try to have videos out every single day going into grand finals. Let me know if there's anything specifically you guys want to see in the comment section down below. Remember, subscribe to the channel if you guys are new, as we are trying to upload daily competitive content for you guys, as I was just saying. If you want to support me even more, the best way to do so is by using code KDOG in the Fortnite item shop. YouTube says to enjoy 1 to 2 videos up on the screen right now, so go check them out if you guys haven't already. Follow me on my Twitch, link in the description down below, because we are going to be talking about grand finals and streaming grand finals over there as well. Follow me on my Twitter at ChiliKDog to keep up to date with everything to do with Fortnite competitive. Thank God for another day, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace out.